What's up, coaches? This is the Football Coaching Podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain, co-host here with Joe Daniel, as always.
What's up, Coach?
Coach, we're live.
We are live.
It feels pretty good.
We are live.
I'm pretty excited. Getting the Football Coaching Podcast live is going to be big time, I think. I think it's a fun way to share to our personal pages, because I'm not sure that all people on my Facebook listen to the Football Coaching Podcast. But now they will. At least that's the hope.
I'm not on my personal page. I'm on my Facebook page.
Businesses.
None of mine.
Real quick,
I don't even know what's on. I don't even know what is on my personal page anymore.
Mine is just business now. I don't personal with it.
Yeah.
Just let you know what's coming up this episode. We're talking about developing backups. Key problem is we don't have enough depth at key positions. And so we're going to talk about some ways tonight to solve that problem. The Coach Simple philosophy, just keeping things very simple so that you don't have to bring a guy up so quick, because when you coach simple, everyone can kind of play fast and win. It's like there's a whole motto with it. Developing depth, even if you don't have numbers. How do you get that next key quarterback, safety, whatever it is, even if your numbers are low? I've talked to a lot of coaches this week. They're like the 20 to 30 kids count, which the 11-man ball, at least you got some kind of depth, but you need to really develop those key places. And then using your scout team to develop future starters. As you all know, Joe's system is big on using your terminology for scout team. You don't try to use the other people's terminology. You just build out whatever they do with your stuff. So I'm pretty excited to get in and talk about that. Before we do, Joe, let's hit them with level up.
All right. I'm going first.
You are.
We jumped right into that. All right. So, I had a couple things. So kind of the last vacation of the summer, I took my son, my wife's family has a house up in Bethany Beach, Delaware, which Delaware, by the way, is great for that end of that August beach trip, because, my dad lives in Myrtle Beach, and we go to Outer Banks. And it can get really hot there. Delaware was like 80 degrees. The water is like cool. So we did that. That was a good time. Son got a little beach time. He got a little pool time. So got a little Grammy and Pops time, and his cousins and everything. So it was a good family trip. But I had another one. We, with our JDFB premium coaching systems clients, we do every Monday night, we do a live Chalk Talk Q&A during the season. During the off season, we do once a month. In season, we go every Monday night. Get your game planning and everything. So last week we had one of our coaches. I did not ask him for permission to talk about it, so I won't use his name. I'm sure he'd be fine. But the previous week he had come on with a question that was like, basically they've beaten everybody, right? They've won every game except one, and they kept seeing this team in the playoffs, and this team kept knocking them off in the playoffs, and for like 4 years. And other than one game, which was in like a torrential downpour and was a close game, the rest of them were pretty much like on average, like, 42 to 21 type games or something like that. So I was asking for, how can we, what should we do, whatever. And I was, I had my advice. We talked about they were wishbone. And so talked about, what some different things up front that we could use and everything. And it was like, but I was like, the reality is you've been getting beat by 3 or 4 touchdowns every single week. So you need to slow the game down and give yourself a shot at the end, because this team is better than you.
Yeah.
But this year they opened the season with them. So normally they only see them in the playoffs, and this year they opened the season. And heard from him Monday night, and they won 28-0. Shut them down, forced them out of the wishbone, forced them into, the wishbones and the double wings and stuff. When you shut them down, they go to some sort of a, spread type of thing that they're horrible at. And it's like, once you see that, you're like, oh, fine. And it's such a miserable thing to defend when you've got these teams with the double wings and the wishbones and the dead tees and all of these that are these just punishing offenses, that when they get into something else, you're just like relieved, because you're like, they're not good at this, and it's not nearly as punishing on our kids. So they won 28-0. They did, they used our double wing defense. We call Charger Front, that we share in our 4-2-5 system, is something I got from Rick Stewart, but we use it for everybody now, and we use it for a lot of kind of heavy, like 32 personnel type looks, and a lot of teams have had success, especially if there's teams that run like off tackle a lot, like power counter, super power. Obviously, is kind of what it's designed for. So it's really really excited. I was right out of the gate, first week of games to have a big win. And that team that they've couldn't get. We talk about it all the time. If you come to JDFB and you were 1-9 last season, I'm like, cool. This is easy. Like, it's not hard to look at a 1-9 team and figure out like levers to pull and things to do and how to get from 1-9 to 5-5. Like that's
Right.
That's not that hard. I mean, it's not easy, but it's easy to see from the outside. Like, here are the things that you need to do, and if you can implement these things, you can probably get there. But the hardest thing is the teams that are right at the top. You get the teams that are getting into the second round. Even first round of the playoffs, we can get you there. Second, get into that second round, third round. Making runs in the playoffs, knocking off the number one team. That's the hard stuff because you really have to be sharp. And so we did. That was our first one. I know Con had a great one a few years ago where they were like 0-6 and knocked off the number one team. And it just, those shock the world games are the really fun stuff.
Absolutely. I never think about having a kind of your off offense, right? Like we always talk, I have another defense, just kind of your
Mm-hmm.
if you're cover 3, it's cover 1, or if you're quarters, maybe you go into cover 3 or something, right? You haven't you're off defense. But I've never thought about the offense having that. Like if it's really not working, what's my throw off here?
you see a lot of I've noticed this with the really run heavy team, the really heavy run teams, that they will have some kind of like, if we're down 3 touchdowns, the hand the ball off every single time isn't working, and our like double wing just as an example, but wishbone, wing T, not wing T so much, but like dead T. Their only real passing game is play action, right? It's just not designed for drop back passing, and so they have to get into some sort of a different look for drop back passing. And unfortunately, because they're so good at their run game, when they get in that situation, and it's just a trade off, it's something that you make, and a lot of those teams are so good that like this doesn't become an issue until they, very rarely an issue for them. So you'll see them run it in their scrimmages, right? Because they need to work on it.
Yeah.
But they work so hard at being great at those run plays, which I think is the right thing to do. They're usually terrible in pass protection just because they don't do that. And so, they do. A lot of those teams will have another offense that if it's the break glass offense, and it's usually, I don't know this, like I would love to know the stats of like the success rate of it. Like I just feel like the success rate for those is so low that it's like you're better off just sticking to the plan of wearing them down, and maybe you pop 3 superpowers for 65 yards.
We come to think of it, last year at Bristow, we played another team. So Bristow had been flexbone for years until Chris Cole took over last year, and Cameron Palmer went over to be the OC, and they installed the Bixby offense, the single wing, doing all the crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another team of purple pirates, which is super strange. All purple, all pirates, all flexbone against each other until last year. And that's exactly what happened to us, right? We got up 14 or whatever it was. I don't remember the exact scores. And then as we started running away with it, they went to 2x2 spread, and they had shown it in like one other game.
Yeah.
So we knew it was a possibility. But yeah, I never even thought about like every team has that break glass off it. That's pretty funny.
It's funny too, because you'll see those teams, and if you're not educated in this stuff, then you wouldn't understand that people get upset. You'll see those teams, those really great, like, I just keep going back to double wing because some of them are so good. You'll see those really great double wing teams, and they're just pounding you, they're just killing you. And they're like back off offense, they're like, it's over. Like their version of that is to throw the ball. And it's like, it's because if they keep running their offense, they're going to keep scoring on you. And so the only thing they can do is do the thing that they do horribly, which is throw the ball.
Yeah. Well, it's It'd be interesting. I guess I got to go back and watch more film and see when they flip to that. Because you always talk about being a race to 35, right? If we can get to 35, then it's a
Yeah.
rolling clock. So is it a race to 21 to just get them out of that? I don't know. It'd be interesting to find out. My level up is I have to talk about a little bit of football. We did start practice last week. And just like last year, I'm not able to be at practice every single day. I'm kind of coaching from afar, so just helping more on the computer side and then there for game nights. But got to go to a couple practices this week and then the scrimmage this weekend. And man, is it good to be back on turf. It's good to be back in the box. Like we're doing all the fun things. You miss it, right? Like you're not playing as a coach. So it's not like you miss the playing time. You don't, but man, just the little stuff, spotting plays from the box and we get a half game coming up this weekend and then another half next weekend. So I'm pretty excited about those and just seeing if we can find that key that breaks the defense and gets us a big score or whatever. So I'm looking at that. But on the non-football front, I told y'all a couple weeks ago that I got up on a stage and sang to a live crowd of like 15 and I bombed and they all left. And then I sang the rest of the night to a crowd of my wife and the actual guy whose guitar and the microphone it was, which was so funny. But I've had to start practicing again. So I started guitaring again, which is guitar's like, I guess if you tried to learn piano or any of those, it's complex. It's not normal actions. It doesn't, you could be the strongest. You can't go to the gym and get better at guitar, right? You can't go run 10 miles and get better at guitar. You just have to play guitar to get better at guitar. And so then it's like, where do you find time to get better at that skill that it doesn't benefit me anywhere else? I'm sure like there's some neurologists out there like, yes, it is. You're keeping your brain young, you're building neurons, or, and which is really what I'm doing it for. The same reason we want our kids to be, doing a ton of stuff. What's the name of that book? Range. If you haven't read Range is a really good, just talks about don't be a specialist in anything, do a whole bunch of stuff so you can be good at everything, right? Your brain needs that, especially young in life. For every one Tiger Woods that was good at golf from the time he was 2, there's, a million guys that started at 2 and sucked at golf by the time they got in high school or gave it up or whatever. So probably not a million. Anyway, it's been good to guitar again and just sit down and play tunes. Really, because I had to start listening to more music because I got to find more songs to play because all the stuff I was playing is not outdated, but it's just older. Nobody's listening to it. So I want to learn some of the new stuff. So it was fun. And then another thing, which, guitar I've done in the past and I've gotten good at it and then let it go. Something I've never done, but I've tried for like 4 years is put in food plots for deer hunting. I'm a huge deer hunter. Love it. Bow hunting, rifle, black powder. I hunt every season. I don't know that I got my bow down last year. It was kind of a weird year. But I've had food plot seeds in my garage for 2 years, and I've never gotten it planted because I always miss it. Because you got to go out and spray, and then it's a whole bunch. Anyway, this year I did it though. I'm all in. Went and sprayed the food plots, and today I went and mowed it down, and it's just dirt now. It's ready for seed. If we ever get one more rain, like I just need one more late August, early September rain, and then it's game over. We're gonna get that bad wind. So my level up is all over the place, but that's because that's how we live. Us driven folks, we're all over the place. So guitar and deer and football. It's a great fall.
I always prefer. I've never actually killed a deer. I've been hunting a few times. Talked to one of my buddies, and he's like, it's one of like a friend who, I didn't even know that he ever hunted. He grew up in like a rural county, and I'm like, yeah, like my dad hunts, but it was always football season, and we had to go. I grew up in like suburban Marietta, Georgia. Like we had to drive 2 hours to go hunt. So I had practice on Saturday mornings. So it was like, well, but I always loved like shooting the bow. And like practicing with the bow in the yard, like during the summer and stuff, but I never got to actually go. One of my buddies I was talking to, and I was like, yeah, I've never actually killed a deer. And he's like, oh, well, we can just go. And I was like, you hunt? And he's like, so I've killed like 100 deer. I was like, okay,
let's go.
He went to one of those high schools that like, you kill deer in the field behind the high school in the morning and then like, go to school.
Yeah, that's the life, man, right there. If you can get a deer down by sunup or just after sunup and then, gut it real quick, dad runs it to the processor, like that's where it's at. Or process it yourself.
It's wild. Like this never happened. Obviously, this didn't happen where I grew up, but I have friends who grew up in more rural areas and like they would just leave their gun in the gun rack and go into school. This is, I graduated in 1998.
It's a whole new
They would just leave
time,
their
right?
gun in the gun rack in the parking lot because they were hunting in the morning, and they go straight
Yeah.
to school. It's wild.
Yeah. I mean, that could be a whole show on its own. It's just the change of eras, unfortunately. But instead of doing that, last week we talked about we can't keep up with the spread offense. Next week, if you tune in for the episode, we're going to talk about not having identity as a team, which would be really big because it's you kind of talked about a while ago. If a team has an identity and you can knock them out of it, what do they go to, right? So if you don't have one at all, how bad are you? Where you're just getting knocked out of it on play number 1. So that'll be a really good conversation.
You put yourself out of it, yeah.
Yeah. Before we get into this episode, everyone that's listening, I want you to think about one person, another coach, a football dad, a youth league volunteer, someone who would benefit from this content. I want you to share this episode with them today. So whether it's this live recording that you're watching or the stuff that's edited up and posted later, share this thing out to that guy that you're thinking about. Do what?
We don't edit that much.
No, it's going to be in there. But, there it is. Let's pay the bills and move on with it, Joe.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. It's exciting, having something new after so long. Is your football team stuck in a losing tradition that you can't seem to break, and you put hours and hours of hard work in? You do all the right things. You've tried changing the scheme. You've tried changing the culture, but nothing seems to work, and you can't break the losing cycle. When the going gets tough, when adversity strikes, you see heads drop, and it's the same old, here we go again feeling. It is time to break out. My latest coaching manual is called Breaking the Losing Cycle, and it reveals how underdog teams are turning their seasons around without needing more talent or a bigger roster. Find out why teams stay stuck in the losing cycle, get the secret ingredients to break out, and the quick fix solutions you can use right now to break the losing cycle for good. You can download that manual for free right now at joedanielfootball.com/breaking to break the cycle and put an end to your losing tradition now. It's joedanielfootball.com/breaking, BREAKING. This is not a car, though I should. You're right, Daniel. I should have I don't have to buy them, but yes, breaking, BREAK, not stop in the car.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's also on the homepage now at joedanielfootball.com. So if you don't want to figure that out, just go there.
Go there. We all know that speed wins games. The real question is, are you fast enough? Speed changes everything. It turns average plays into touchdowns and good players into game breakers. But here's the truth. Real speed isn't just natural, it's trained. At Athletic Speed Movement, we show athletes how to get faster, quicker, and more explosive using proven methods that translate directly to the field. Our system was built by Del Basquette, who's done it at the highest level, and it works for all athletes at every level on the way down. So whether you're a coach looking to elevate your team, a parent wanting to give your athlete an edge, this is where speed starts. Go to athleticspeedmovement.com and learn how to build real speed that shows up on game day. Don't just play the game, outrun it. It's still the best. I love that.
I like it.
Let's jump into part 1 here, Coach. Obviously, talking about, needing to build that depth, not having a lot of depth at these key positions, which is whatever position your offense needs it. Most people, it's the quarterback. If you are one of those, I'm going to say antiquated, but it's not an older offense. If you're one of those things that's survived the storms of history, wishbone we talked about earlier, flexbone, wing tee, all these things that are just real run heavy. Maybe it is a quarterback because he's got to be able to read something to dish the ball out somewhere else. It could be defensively. Maybe it's a middle linebacker, whoever's your kind of key person. What's the first step really to building that depth, Coach, when we're especially taking coaching simple philosophy into account?
Yeah, I mean the number one thing is that when you're a small team, the smaller you are, the more you have to remember that you are going to need players to have the ability to play multiple positions. We can't just have a 2-deep depth chart and say, this guy gets hurt, this guy goes in. We know that on an offensive line, you're developing 5 offensive linemen, and you're lucky when you're talking about you've got 25, 20, 25, 30 players on a roster. 27 is the magic number. It's always 27. It feels like every year for me. When we got 27 guys, we would be lucky to have I mean, sometimes you're just hoping to have 5 legitimate varsity starters on the offensive line. Some years you don't have a true quarterback. You're just putting an athlete back there, or you're just putting a good kid who will hand it off and get the ball to athletes. Whatever you've
Yeah.
got. So when your starters are that thin, you're just putting the best 11 out there, and the same thing on defense. You're putting the best 11 out there and you're plugging them in. You know that when you've got 5 offensive linemen, and the offensive line is the easiest thing to look at. You go, look, if you got 5 offensive linemen, you don't have 5 backups. Like,
Right.
they're legitimately, like, if the left tackle goes down, the backup left tackle is going in. What happens is if one of the 5 goes down, you know, usually if one of the 4 guards or tackles goes down, we bring in the 6th guy at any of those spots. And if the center goes down, it usually ends with us having to move one of the guards or tackles in, and to play center, or maybe we've got a backup center, but we try to develop 6 or 7 offensive linemen. We try to develop a quarterback, and then we try to have another quarterback. Now, if you're lucky, you have a JV quarterback who is varsity ready, and is running your system. But, like, a lot of times that, it's like, yeah, he can go out there. A lot of times he's not really ready. He's ready to get us through to an emergency. And then the next week I'm going to need to cross train a receiver who's an athlete to take snaps and do something, more dynamic back there, whatever it is. What it comes down to is the coach simple philosophy is really the key to all of this. And if you look at, every position, we basically have, you can think of them as pods, as groups, where I'm going to have multiple kids who can play multiple positions. On defense, it is the umbrella principle. It is our run fits principle. And it is the idea that in 10 minutes, I can teach everybody the 4 primary roles on a defense. Doesn't matter what front you run. Doesn't matter you run, odd front, even front, 7-man front, 8-man front. Doesn't matter. I can teach everybody that there are spill players, force players, alley player, and stay in coverage players. And then if I need you to move because you're my 12th best player and somebody got hurt and I need to put you out there, I need to be able to just tell you, like, here's the basic alignment rules, the ASCA, alignment stance key read assignment. Here's the basics of it. And, hopefully I got another guy out there that kind of knows what's going on and can help you on the field, because he's probably played it before too, because we move guys around sometimes. But I can't have every position. This is why we always get into the thing of, oh, it's a 4-2-5. It's not a 4-4. It's a 4-2-5, not a 4-4, or 4-4, not a 4-2-5, or whatever.
Right.
Like, who cares? Like, we're putting best 11 out there. I can't get hung up in whether or not this guy is an outside linebacker or a safety. Those are just names. Half of you are calling, half coaches are calling them all hawks and bats and birds and dogs, and so it doesn't matter if you want to call them safeties or not. So is that not a 4-2-5? Are we going to go with DeTavio's 3-2-2-4 or whatever he called it just to troll me? So the key is that each one of those positions ultimately is simple and teachable. And the more that you're going to have to plug guys into spots, the more your 5 offensive linemen have to be mostly interchangeable, not necessarily specialized to being a left tackle. Obviously, the center is the most specialized of them. I talk about I only like to run, or I like to only run, power to the right, counter to the left, and that's just because I can focus on one guy learning that pulling. But everybody does the pull drill. Everybody has to know how to do it, because I don't know who's going to be shuffled around. My receiver positions have to be easy for a guy to move from X to Z. My tight end, so in our pistol power offense system, the H-back and the Y should all theoretically be able to play an offensive line position, because again, it's just counting to 3. It's knowing, there's an inside man and an outside man. The only thing that they never do as an H or a Y is they're never the inside man on a combo. They're always the outside guy. So if, I got to teach them to be the drive man, or to be the post man instead of the drive man, but that's, so, and then it's having a system where you can step somebody in at the quarterback position, and having a system that is adaptable to, multiple types of players. So that it's like, if my quarterback, I liked what we did last year in some respects I didn't, but we essentially had 3 quarterbacks and 3 offenses. We had a spread that suited one of our quarterbacks, and really, and each one of those offenses, each kid could really run 2 of them, I would say. So like so they each had their package, but then they had the one that they could also run. So, if we lose one of those quarterbacks, which we did, we don't have to kill that package entirely. Because they not only suited the quarterback skills, but they suited other player skills. And I liked having packages that were suited to each of those 3 quarterbacks. We knew that they could each run basically 2 packages. And if we had to go with just one of them, and sometimes it's just like, let's go with the hot hand, let's go with what's working. Let's go with what fits against this team and really run it. And the fact that they could, 3 different kids could run those positions. And by the way, 2 of them played multiple, that when they weren't playing quarterback, they were playing wing back or Z receiver or something like that. So having that Coach Simple philosophy where multiple players can play multiple positions and you can teach them quickly, and they're not so specialized. When you get into a lot of specialization by position, it becomes really hard to deal with an injury. But when you have groups, all of my receivers can run any of the receiver positions. It's not that difficult. Multiple kids can play quarterback because we have a versatile offense that can do different things at quarterback. If I lose the 6'5" laser rocket arm, I can still put in, I can easily do a running type of offense. One of the things that I see with the double wing that we talked about at the beginning, and again, I keep going to double wing, but double wing, wing T, or not wing T, double wing, dead T, the 32 personnel type of stuff, the really heavy power high. When that's your base, and we talked about, they have to go to something that's completely different sometimes if they're down. And by the way, a lot of them are so good that like they don't get down that much. But if they do, they're down 4 touchdowns, it's like, they try to do something else, and they're really, really bad at it because it's so out of their identity. And they have such a strong identity, which is good. But their identity is so strong in one direction towards the run game that it is very difficult for them to put together a decent passing game, in that situation. One of the things, if you run an offense that is not so strong in one direction, and I would say air raid maybe to an extent, like is kind of the other direction of like, if you lose the quarterback, like it suddenly gets harder. But when you're our one back offense, the pistol power offense system, one back offense, wing T's really are very adaptable. When we look at years ago, Lou Johnson with the shotgun wing T, but then, now with like Rick doing the pistol and Kenny doing the gun T, and like it's very adaptable. You can get into a lot of stuff from a wing T system. Those are really adaptable systems, more so than your extremes, and so you can set them up to where like we don't change what the offensive line does, but if I have a different quarterback, but the quarterback athleticism can change them. But it's all about that Coach Simple philosophy and staying with things that you can teach kids, and knowing that when you don't have a lot of backups, you can't get really super specialized.
I know that some coaches do. So like we're talking about Kenny and his gun T, right? He flips the whole O line. So like
Right.
you talk about, I guess that is a little bit specialized, but it's still pod work, right? He still just has, you're either a down blocker or a pull guy.
Right.
And it's like, where do you fit in? And then we're even going to flip formation so that you don't really have to work the other one, which might be kind of nice. Because if your 6th man is, I guess you carry 2 6 men, right? Number 6 is a down guy and 7's a puller. But
yeah, but I mean, you've got guys that could, even though you're specialized in that way, my guess is that everybody has worked all of those things, and you're just setting it up for what they do best and letting them specialize in it. So I wouldn't say that that's like, it is a little bit more like that's what they're always doing. But at the same time, like my 6th guy, all right, he's a down blocker. Do I have a guy who's a down blocker that could, I lose a puller? Do I have one of my down blocker that's like the 3rd best puller, and I just bump him over and put my 6th guy who's, your 6th guy is probably not the guy who can do everything, though, as we talked about last week, like Sometimes it is. Sometimes you do have the guy that's just the Swiss Army knife, and he's he's a smart kid and a tough kid, and he'll do anything you ask him to do, and he'll figure it out. And that's how you end up with a 160-pound guard in a playoff game. But that's the kid. Like that's sometimes we have to have that kid when our numbers are low.
Yeah. I think just the Coach Simple philosophy as a whole, if you use it from playbook creation to how you're doing your practices, whether it's the pods or whatever you're doing, I think that's the way to gain depth initially. Like, yes, we all want to go out and have a whole bunch of tags. We do. Shoot, we tag things up like crazy. You've got to have enough simplicity that the guy can step in and be successful. And whatever that means for your key position. Once again, if you're a single back offense, maybe it's that one dude. Maybe it is a guard or a tackle or whatever, right? I mean, your key guy could change. Everyone's key guy, I feel like, is probably the quarterback, which is kind of where this episode probably is rooted in. But yeah, just keeping things where anyone could go out and run it. I agree with keeping the kids, like you said, where they can just kind of fit in wherever. Your sixth man can just go play. Your sixth athlete, right, can just kind of fit into whichever receiver role or running back, quarterback, whatever. Those are great deals.
Yeah, I guess I should real quick, because we've said it so many times, I should go through the Coach Simple philosophy real quick. The Coach Simple philosophy is what we build everything on at JDFB and at JDFB Premium Coaching Systems, and the foundation of everything that we do. And the Coach Simple philosophy basically is you keep it simple. And simple isn't a specific number of plays, or simple is what is necessary at your level. There's a minimum, but simple is different at different levels. Simple is different based on what your players can handle. Simple is different based on what you are able to teach and the experience of you and your coaching staff and the people around you and what they can teach. So simple isn't the same for everybody. There are simple offenses in the NFL and there are complex ones there, but obviously if you ran the simple NFL offense at the middle school level, it wouldn't be simple. So there's a sliding scale. But you keep it simple, meaning what we talk about is bandwidth of confidence. So you talk about bandwidth of confidence, what your players can handle, what they can do. And so your players, simple is what is within their bandwidth of confidence, what they believe that they can do. You keep it simple so your kids understand what they're being asked to do, so that the coaches can understand what they're teaching and teach the players how to do these things. And what it does is it lets the players understand their job. They know what they're doing. They know their role. They're confident in it. They believe that they can do this. And where that bandwidth of confidence works is they are in that bandwidth of, I believe I can do this. And as you increase their football IQ in your system and you increase your teaching ability and everything, they'll start to bounce up against the top of that bandwidth of confidence. And that is when you're able to expand what simple means. If they're down here and they're confused, confusion is when they're out of the bandwidth. So what we do when we keep it simple is we avoid that confusion, because confusion is the cause of playing soft, slow, sloppy, scared football. If your kids are playing soft, slow, sloppy, and scared, and you're going, well, it's because they don't care, they don't want to win, so on and so forth. That's not the case, and you're going to have to fix that. Even if it was the case, it doesn't matter, because you have to fix it. You're the coach.
Yeah.
So we keep it simple so the kids understand what they're being asked to do. They're confident in what they're doing. Confidence allows kids to play fast. They know what to do. They know how to do it. They believe they can do it. On defense, they fly around. They show up at the point of attack with a purpose. On offense, they are communicating. They know their blocks. They know their reads. They know how the system works. They understand what they are being asked to do and how to do it. Confident kids play fast. So a lot of coaches will come to JDFB and say, we need to play more aggressive. No, you don't. So again, we always go back to, crazy kids are great. We all love the crazy kids, but it's best for society if you only have one or two of them on your team. So we've got to get everybody playing fast and confident, not just being aggressive. When you're hitting the bag and they're going, grrr, and they hit the bag. Like, that's not it. That's fake. That's not it. So we get them to play fast. Faster kids win more football games. So that's the Coach Simple play fast win. Keep it simple so your kids can play fast, play confident. It's just science. If kids are playing faster on the field, they're going to win more games. So that's what we're talking about, the Coach Simple philosophy. That's what it is. And you have to know, I think one of the things is you can develop, like, for sure, I want to develop a number one quarterback. I want to develop the dude who knows how to read a defense, who knows all the stuff, who knows all the tags, who works with all of our receivers and knows the timing of all of that. I want that. I've got to know the bandwidth of confidence of my backup. And if my backup is my Z receiver who's going to come in and take snaps, and he's like literally his only pass play is a rollout play action or sprint out or something because that's what he's good at, that's fine as long as number one, that fits within my system. And number two, I know that that's within what he's confident in doing. If I try to take him and say, no, screw you, kid, no matter what, you are going to run 5-step drops and you're going to need to go through a 5-man progression. Like, that's not going to work.
Yeah. So you talked about your backup quarterback, and of course, we have to build that depth, but some coaches just don't have the numbers, right? You talked about 27 being this magical number. I've seen a lot of low 20s this year. And unfortunately, we're coaching a sport that's kind of, it's not trending anymore, right? It's decreasing every year. It goes down a little bit. I don't think it'll ever die because the NFL is there. But numbers aren't what they used to be for a lot of guys. So how do we develop that depth when I don't even have a second guy? Like, I barely have enough to go out and practice 11 on 11. How are we getting that next guy ready?
I have a lot of theories on the numbers, by the way, because there's actually, now I could be wrong on these, but as far as the numbers that I pulled, and for business, I pulled these numbers, there's actually more programs. Now we do know that there's more programs moving to, and that's just, population growth and stuff, and new schools open up and that kind of thing. And I don't think there's been a drop in youth programs really. Obviously, everybody's mileage may vary. You may have had a program around you closed down recently. I understand that, but there's also more that are opening in other places. So when you start to have all of the movement, like I know in Oklahoma, you have the transfer portal, which is just insane to me.
It's
But
very insane.
we don't have a transfer portal, but we have a lot of, it's illegal recruiting, but what the hell if nobody's going to, how illegal is it if nobody's going to do anything?
Right.
What happens is, let's say I've got 27 and 2 of them get taken from me. Well, I don't get anything. It wasn't a trade. They were recruited away from me. Those 2 go to another school that pulls 2 from me and 2 from them and 2 from them and 2 from them. Well, what happens to the kids who should be playing at that school? They quit. They don't transfer to my school because I have openings. So there's a contraction in the number of players that's going to happen naturally from that, where the schools that are doing that people are transferring to, those kids are just going to quit because they're not good enough to go transferring schools to play, to be a backup somewhere so they're just going to not play. Anyway, we do see teams moving to 8-man and things of that nature. We're working with more and more 8-man, 9-man. The expansion of 9-man has really been surprising because a few years ago, 9-man was almost non-existent. Since there's a lot more 9-man now than there used to be. I have no idea how Canada plays with an extra guy when it's like not even a popular sport there. I mean, it is popular, but it's not like here.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, no, screw it. We're going to have an extra guy. It's like, so what are the Canadian teams going to do? Are they going to be like, all right, we're going to play 11-man?
10-man. We're down to 10 and maybe they go to 9-man.
I think they go to 11 first and just be like, this is weird. We're going to need an extra down. I have had
so nice. We'll give you another down.
Yeah. I have had coaches who came to JDFB and were like, we play 10-man. And I'm like, what is the point? Like, what did that accomplish? Anyway, yeah, if you've only got, let's say 15 guys or 18 guys, like you have no choice but to, again, develop depth in different ways. And so there's a couple of things that I think that we need to do to develop that depth. One is, again, we need to have very fast-paced practices. We need to have drills and plans where everybody is getting work. The old way where the backups are essentially there to service the starters, right? So you're doing drills where your 5 offensive linemen are blocking the play and your other 4 or 3 or whatever are just being blocking dummies and stuff, and that's really going to hurt you. So what we did years ago. I don't even remember who I got this from. I know I didn't come up with it. I'm not that smart. I know I heard it from somebody. And usually if I remember remotely who I stole it from, I try to give them credit, but I don't remember who I stole it from.
That's when
I
it
stole
becomes yours. When you can't remember where you got it.
It's like Aska. I know I stole Aska from somebody, but if I try to Google it to find out who I stole it from, it's all me because I wrote so much stuff about it. And I'm like, God, this guy is such a thief. The one-on-one game, win the one-on-one game. And the drill work that you do is the one-on-one game. And I know that I can take a football play and I can shrink a football play down to a series of one-on-one games. So it's the one-on-one games of the key read. You know, I always use the linebacker as a really simple example, but if I'm a linebacker and if I'm a weak side linebacker and they run power to the strong side, so away from me to the tight end, whatever. And the first one-on-one game, okay, the ball is snapped, the guard pulls. I key read, guard pulls. If he pulls, follow. If he doesn't fill, he pulls. I shoot to the front side, first open door past the center. It's first one-on-one game number one. One-on-one game number two, as I shoot to the first open door past the center, it's the A gap. The A gap's open. I shoot to the A gap. The guard is in a combo or in a 3-tech. He comes off, and he now comes off to block me, and I use a rip drill to get through him. Well, so I should back up. I have a guard read drill that I work the one-on-one game. Then I have a rip drill where I work my rip move to get through that block. I use a rip move. I don't use anything but that, just because undersized guys, and it's a whole different podcast. So we rip through the block. One-on-one game number two. Okay, so I read the key. I rip through the block. Now I pick up the back and I track the inside hip of the back. And so now I'm playing our in-out drill. I'm tracking the back. One-on-one game number three. I've tracked that. I'm tracking to the hip. And then one-on-one game number four is to execute the hawk tackle. So we have a drill for that. So I've broken that down into 4 one-on-one games. Now I can't run a drill efficiently where if all I ever do is team, how many reps of that stuff does he get, right? Not that many. If all I ever do, even if it's an inside drill, a group drill, and a lot of coaches will do this because they'll be like, well, we don't have that many guys, and so we're just going to go straight to team or go straight to group. It's like you need to be more creative than that. Instead, what I want to do is I want to have fast-paced drills that are drilling the one-on-one game over and over and over again. Simple drills that don't have a lot of contact, simple drills that could even be run without a lot of coach supervision, or that I could have let's say I've only got two coaches and we're in a defensive time. I want to be able to have drills where I can have one coach and he's got the defensive lineman over here. They're working their one-on-one key read drills, and he's got the linebackers over here and they're working this. And then secondary coach, he's got the umbrella drill working and they're all working their key reads, their footwork. So that we break it down to where two coaches can run the entire thing. You know, same thing. I want to run my receivers in a blocking drill, and my backfield is working our exchanges at the same time. Then of course the offensive line can work as a unit, working their drills, working their blocks. So I break this down into one-on-one games where I can get fast paced. I can rep those one-on-one games a lot over and over and over and over and over again, very fast paced, because it's one-on-one. So if I've only got 8 guys, I've got 4 groups, which means I've got four pairs of partners, right? So if that drill only takes 20 seconds, let's say, to run and reset, well, in a minute, I can get one guy 3 reps, flip it, get the other guy 3 reps, flip it, get 3 more reps, and so I can get 6 reps for the entire team or the entire group in 4 minutes. I like 4-minute periods because it's faster. It's just another thing, because you even less time to sit there and talk. Because 4-minute period, coaches feel like if they go down to a 4-minute period and they start talking about what they're going to do, like, period's going to be over, whistle's going to blow, it's done. So in order to develop that depth, you break things down into the one-on-one game, and then you drill everybody every day. It's not everyday drills because they progress, but you drill everybody on those one-on-one games so they all know how to execute them. If you have a kid who is maybe a defensive lineman and a linebacker, he can go one day there and one day here and get that work. And so I can get more players prepared faster. They're all working. They're all getting a lot of reps. By the way, all of these, not all, but most of these drills that we use are non-contact, which means if you have access to your players, and I know in a couple of states you don't, Washington and Massachusetts don't, but most of us have access to our players. And in the smaller schools, you might have your kids playing a lot of sports, but at least in the summer, you've got access to your players. You can run these drills without pads. And so you can be working on this long term. So that is number one. And then we move into the second phase here. You get all of those players work at all of those things um, through the rest of your practice as you build practices build from the one-on-one game to group to team.
I feel like coaches really are so either indie heavy or group slash team heavy. You know what I mean? I know there's no perfect answers, no perfect formula, but maybe it's just because, like you said, like that kid's already not serviceable to me. So why am I going to waste our time out here? And I think that's the wrong answer, right? Maybe that
Mhm.
kid needs more indie. And something you surprised me with your everyday drill philosophy, which is like, I don't want to come out and say that you hate everyday drills, but when you go out and do the same drill
It's got
every
to
day,
progress. Yeah.
yes, it needs to. Yeah, it has to progress, has to evolve. You got to get
Yeah.
on to the next
It's
skill.
it's the same drill, but it's got
We've
a
added
progression.
some complexity, right? We've added something, a read, something. You can take your first 3 steps 1,000 times during the season as an offensive lineman, but it should probably build into something else,
Think
right?
I blocked
As
somebody.
you get those things down, right? Otherwise, we're going to really good for 3 steps on Friday night, and then
You win a lot of
okay,
games if you're just good for 3 steps, in all honesty, but yeah, it's I don't hate everyday drills, but the concept of everyday drills, the way that they were presented years ago, was you do the same drill, the same 5 drills every single day. And if you're breaking this down, now maybe that works with certain drills, but if you're breaking this down to the one-on-one game and all I ever do is the same one-on-one game and there's never the progression of the drill, I've just got a kid who's really good at the drill. Well, at some point, the drill has to progress to start looking a little bit more. So, a lot of times, the progression of the drill actually makes your practice more efficient as we get later in the season. We like to have shorter practices. The great ball fire in the sky starts to go down a little bit earlier. And, we got to get out of there because we don't want to burn the lights and get in trouble with the school for how much power costs because we're in one of those schools with no money and no players and no
yeah,
anything. And so, a lot of times what happens with those drills is simply you become more efficient and you take a guard. So you go back to what we were talking about before, the series of one-on-one games. So now I just add in, okay, to our in add out or to our guard read drill, I just add in, I go from guard read, the guard read and the in add out, the tracking the back get combined. And I start to basically run a play, but we're not really running the play. He's not going through, he's not tackling the guy. Or I do the key read drill and then I go through and have a blocker that I have to rip through. And so it's more of a combination of drills, building those drills over time. Now, you can't do that or you shouldn't do that early because a lot of your players haven't learned how to execute the one-on-one game yet. So if I jump straight to combining this into essentially a play, a lot of kids never learn the one-on-one game.
yeah. I like the way that you presented that. The one-on-one game, progress to the next one, add the next piece, do the next thing. I definitely can see, because of my first year when I was taught how to coach wide receivers, and it was here's John Gruden's 48 individual drills that receivers need to be good at. If you do these, our receivers will be great this year, right? Um, so comparing that to just pick 3 really good drills that actually make you better at your style of wide receiver, for instance, what are they doing in your offense? It might just be stock blocking, which is the most boring possible way to ever spend your life as a wide receiver. I lived that life, but at least you should be really good at it. But at least if you identify a few of these drills and go out, you can get fundamentally sound at some stuff. But I do like the idea of they have to evolve. You've got to get on to something else to make sure those kids are still progressing. What I wonder is, and this is just future me thinking or thinking about future options here, the way we do athletic speed and movement originally, where each kid can be in a different position. Do you ever get your indie time down to that? It's like what that kid needs to work on. So your kid who can't take 3 steps is not worried about eyes on the second level and blocking first level with his hands or whatever, right? I mean, I kind
Right.
of wonder, can you get there as a coach?
Absolutely.
We're told we're supposed to do that in the classroom when we're teaching biology,
Yeah,
right? Like
differentiation. Yeah.
you're supposed to know where every kid is and meet them where they are. Can we do that in indie for our kids to ensure
Absolutely.
that we are developing those kids?
I so you know one of the things is if you've got 4 kids, they kind of tend, if you got 4 kids in a position group, they kind of tend to develop at the same rate. Like, one of them's not as good at it, and everybody knows that, but like, we can keep him up with us. What's happened where I can say that we've done that is when the let's say the JV was practicing separate, and then for whatever reason, this day, this week, this scenario, the JV is now going to be with the varsity. And what that can be really valuable for a couple of things. Number one, we'll tell the varsity guys, as long as you've got a mature group with the varsity guys, you say, hey, look, maybe the JV hasn't been doing these drills. Maybe they've just been going straight to team because they don't, they got 2 guys, they don't know what to do. They're just like, we're going team. So bring those guys in and you say, look, varsity guys, you're going to be over here. JV guys, you're going to be over here. And we're doing the same drill, but like you said, there's a different level. Or we just say, hey, the JV guys aren't ready for this yet. So varsity guys, when you go, you're going to do it this way. JV guys want to do it this way. So we differentiate that way. But also what you get out of that when you differentiate is you get the guys who now it's you have to, I love that culture word or whatever, but that it's not, I guess it's culture, but it's like, just, you have decent kids and most kids are decent kids. You've got the experienced kids who know that they know how to do it. And we've clearly differentiated them and said, this guy knows it. This guy doesn't yet, or he hasn't gotten it yet. And if you get your kids who know it starting to coach up the kids who don't, you get a couple of things. Number one, you start getting the kids who are trying to learn it, hearing a different voice, different words, maybe different, hey, this is what helped me learn it. And so they get a different picture, which can be really beneficial for them. But also we know that if you can teach something, that shows a certain level of mastery in it. So if your varsity starter is now teaching the JV or teaching the backups how to do this thing, I think they're going to come along faster because they have an extra coach, and he's going to become more understanding of how things work. Years ago, I started doing this. We would draw open. This is where I first started it, and then I started adding it in different places, and I didn't keep it around as much as I should have. We would do an open field tackling drill, and what I didn't like about the open field tackling drill, right, is if I had and this was when I was at a big school, a 5A, and, if I had 14 kids in a group and you're doing open field tackling, how many kids are going? I can break it up into two boxes, and I can differentiate that by saying, here's the kids who aren't great at open field tackling. They're going to have a 5x5 box. And here's the kids who are ready, and they're going to do a 10x10 box. But the other thing I did was I would have my top guys go once or twice, and then they would go to the corner. And so I always have 2 of them. You never just put 1 kid over here. They would go to the corner. And so the kid who would tackle would do his drill. This allowed me to go faster, by the way, because I didn't have to stop and teach. They would do their tackling drill. And the kid who did the tackling drill, not the ball carrier would go get in line to tackle. The kid who just was supposed to do the tackling, he would go to the 2 kids in the corner. And they needed to talk to him about what he did right, what he did wrong, coach him up. And what happened was the kids who were now doing you started to have the kids coaching. I think Urban Meyer was one of the first ones to really make this popular, but years and years ago, back, probably in Utah or whatever. The kids who were now having to have a plan of what I'm going to say to somebody to teach it, they start to recognize what they're doing wrong. And then you start to say to them, hey, why'd you miss that tackle? Coach, I crossed my feet. They recognize it now because they've learned to teach it. And so they recognize it in themselves. So there's a lot of benefit to differentiation of the drills, for sure.
That's something I'll have to think about moving forward. Let's jump to our last part here, Joe. I know we're kind of pushing time tonight. Using your scout team to develop future starters. Obviously, this takes a certain amount of preparation because you got to have a coach who can kind of multitask, right? Generally, it's your offensive coordinator runs the scout offense, so your defense coordinator can do his thing. But there's some offensive coordinators out there that aren't O-line coaches. There's some that aren't receivers coaches, right? They may know the route, but they don't know the fundamentals. They don't know the technique. So I think that's a big piece of this is if you're going to use your scout team to develop these guys, whoever's over there running your scout team better have a fairly good understanding of what he's looking at, what he needs to improve on. I think as a head coach or whoever's running that period, you need to have some leeway for like, yeah, great. We want to get these reps over with. We want to get in and get out and maybe use film for this. I know, Joe, you're big on using film at practice to coach later, but somebody's going to be telling those kids what they're doing wrong as you're running scout team. I think the biggest piece is just making sure that you run scout offense just like you run your offense. Doesn't have to be the same scheme, right? We're a single wing. We're not going to run out and teach the flex bone terminology. We're going to run what we run and make the flex bone out of it. And it may not be exact.
Yep.
And I've seen coaches on both sides of that fence as well. I want exactly how they're going to run it. So on Friday, we are very familiar with what they are supposed to do. And then some people are like, dude, I don't care. Get 11 guys on the other side of the ball so I can go out and run my rules and run my offense, right? And people pick one of those camps and tend to live in them. I'm more of the your rules better just cover everything team. So how are we using scout team to develop those future starters?
Yeah, it's the idea is that ultimately I can create a reasonable, I can line up in your formations, I can line up in your defense where your guys line up. I can give them some of the basics of, what is important. So like if I'm the linebackers coach, what is important for me is that the formation is what it is, what it's going to look like on Friday night so that I can make my calls, make my checks, recognize tendencies. And that if somebody is supposed to pull, they pull. And if somebody is supposed to down block, they down block. And if somebody, that's the biggest thing for me is if they're supposed to pull, they pull. So I can't go out there and be like, well, we don't pull, so we're not going to pull, even though they're a wing
Right.
T. And the part of that is having a flexible offense that can do all of these things. So like I can line up on our offense and I can name any offense that they run. On defense, it is, I'm still doing all of our key reads. I'm still doing all of our so if I'm whether I am a 30 technique linebacker, let's say my base defense is a 4-2-5, and I'm a 30 technique linebacker outside shade of the guard, 5 yards off the ball. Well, when we play a 3-3 stack, I just slide over to, behind the tackle, but I'm still keying the guard. I'm still, I'm not changing any of that. If I'm normally a shaded defensive lineman, I learned that my key reads don't change. I slant when I go to an odd front and I'm head up now and I'm slanting. I'm just slanting to the shade and then I'm still using the same key reads. In other words, what I do is our scout team is executing all of the techniques that we normally execute. They're not doing anything different. Now I may be combining them in different ways to create or different formations, but I'm combining them in different ways to create what your team actually what our opponent does. But ultimately, the one-on-one games, and this is where if you want to overcomplicate football, you won't like this, but ultimately the one-on-one games are for the most part the same. And so, tell me what defense doesn't read guards. Okay. It may not be your primary read. I don't the hell if I'm going to sit there and try to figure out what the primary read and secondary read of your linebackers are when you're, you got a sophomore back there and he's just running around. But like there's certain things I can see that you're really disciplined and you fly with guard reads and stuff like that. But and if I need somebody, I can say, look, just obviously we can read guards. But at the end of the day, every defense, whether you are a 3-3 or a 3-2 or a 3-4 or 5-2 or whatever, it doesn't matter. All linebackers have to track backs and they have to follow guard pulls. Like that's just football. And so I'm going to the one-on-one games of that weak side linebacker that we talked about, whether he is now a linebacker in the 3-3, whether he's playing strong side linebacker, and whether he's playing middle linebacker, whatever, every single one of them, he can still read the guard. He can still rip through the blocker. He can still track the hip of the ball carrier. He can still finish the play with the hawk tackle. He can still do all of those things. And so what I'm doing now is I'm letting my backups continue to progress, taking the one-on-one games to group and to team where they are now combining the one-on-one games together and they are getting the reps. If I try to run my scout team, and I'm sure there's arguments for trying to make your scout team look exactly like them or whatever, but it is much more valuable to me that my scout team is motivated by the fact that I've got a coach back there, and I want that coach to know as much as he can about their position group. But like you said, if I'm the defensive coordinator and the offensive line coach, I don't want my backup offensive lineman thinking because I'm over there running the defense. I can't really seriously coach them, and there's probably nobody who really understands what they're supposed to do the way that the offensive line coach does. So yes, I think there's a huge value in filming your team sessions and having me, the defensive coordinator, go in and do some coaching on the tagging and notes for my scout team offensive line, just 5 or 10 plays, but I want them to know that they're being watched and they're developing
For sure.
and then that this matters. And so the value in this now is that my scout team may not look now, the formation needs to be the same. If they pull, they need to pull. But like the backfield doesn't have to be the exact same. I want to try to emulate the play. Like I try to emulate the play action more in umbrella drill than in actual, team stuff. But the value of me developing depth is more important than and having a motivated scout team who is trying hard, who is in their bandwidth of confidence, than having kids going out there trying to learn an entire new system that they're not going to execute very well. I'm not going to be able to run your double wing. I'm not going to be able to run your wing T. I'm not going to be able to run your triple option. And I'm an air raid. Like, it's just not happening. So why am I going to pretend? Now I can run a semblance of a double wing. I always have fun that week because the offensive, I've always wanted to run a double wing, right? And the wing tees and the double wings, I have a lot of fun because I get to go out there and combine what we already do, but try to run this offense that I've always wanted to run. And sometimes we're successful, and I love it. Like we start having success against the scout team or against the defense and stuff. It's fun, but there's way more value in that because your scout team is motivated because they know that what they're doing is not a waste of time. They are not running the other team's plays. They are running our stuff maybe from a different look, but ultimately I'm down blocking, I'm pulling, I'm running 24, I'm running power, I'm running, the blocking scheme changes a little bit, the route's a little bit different, whatever, but they're doing our stuff. Yeah. And so they're going to be more motivated. They're also going to be getting better. They're learning to apply those one-on-one game drills to the field. And so when I have an injury, I have a kid who was motivated all week in practice. I have a kid who was working on his craft all week in practice, and I can plug him into that spot. Now, because your scout team usually doesn't have a perfect fit of your 11 guys, that's a great chance for you to take a guy who is your backup defensive end and also your backup outside linebacker and get him a little defensive end work, get him a little outside linebacker work, whatever. So there's lots of opportunities here.
You kind of hit on a point there. We've talked a couple of years ago about like, hey, your inside linebacker of the future may be playing outside linebacker right now.
Yes.
Because he just doesn't have the frame. He hasn't matured yet. He hasn't developed. He may be playing safety. He may be doing something else because that's what the team needs him to do right now to be successful. But this is a great opportunity to develop those kinds of kids in a spot that you obviously aren't going to have. Well, I say obviously. Some people they can two platoon a little better, but generally, your starting inside linebacker is probably playing running back.
He's probably a guard, yeah.
Back or guard. He's probably doing something for the offense. So he's not there. So you can slide another kid in. So this is a great chance to get reps. See if you have one of those crazy kids, right? You said we liked so much. Do I have a dude over here that's a freshman, a sophomore? He's not really ready, but man, he'll just stick his nose in there and he doesn't know any better. Maybe he doesn't key read great or his steps aren't great or whatever. But he's willing to just throw his body. So it's a great place to find those kind of kids too. So it is a kid for the future. Maybe he's playing out of position right now. I still go back to my time at East Central when I was a scout team defensive end. I'm not a defensive end. I was 5'10" and 165 pounds, but I worked with those offensive tackles and I even made good friends because I was just giving them work with speed that they didn't get on the daily, practice time. So, there's a chance there to work future skills for these kids, even if it isn't the position they're playing, regardless of the scout side. So anyway, Joe, I think we have checked all the boxes for the night. Real quick, before we go any further, don't hit pause, don't skip, don't go to the next podcast just yet if you're listening in a couple of days. I want you to think about the coach who's helped you when you were learning. So when you were a new coach, you were coming in this game, someone set you down and taught you the basics. They taught you the fundamentals, showed you the ropes. We know the world has gotten a lot smaller since then with podcasts and YouTubes and all these things out there. So think of someone that could use an episode like this, a podcast like this, and send them this episode, send them the last episode. Last week we did talk about can't keep up with spread offenses. So just getting defenses to be kind of more multiple, more adaptable. Next week we're going to talk about having no identity as a team, how to go in and fix that issue and find your identity. If you know a coach that could deal with something like or could benefit for something like that, send this episode to them. Tonight we talked about developing backups, the Coach Simple philosophy, developing depth, even if you don't have a lot of numbers, and then of course using your scout team to develop future starters. Next week, or I said, we're talking about no identity as a team. Joe, let's pay the bills one more time. We'll close out of here.
Yeah, if you've tried everything, if you've tried changing schemes, you've tried to change this culture, but you cannot break out of the losing cycle. If every time that the going gets tough, adversity strikes, you see the heads drop, same old, here we go again, feeling it is time to break out of that losing cycle. I've got a brand new coaching manual called Breaking the Losing Cycle that reveals how underdog teams are turning their seasons around without needing more talent or a bigger roster. You can find out why teams are staying stuck in the losing cycle, the secret ingredients to break out, and quick fix solutions that you can use right now to break that losing cycle. The free manual is available at joedanielfootball.com/breaking, BREAKING. Find out how to break the losing cycle and put an end to your losing tradition now.
Love it. BREAK.
Stop the car. Breaking. No.
I want to remind you to jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com if you're looking to add speed, agility, explosiveness, all the good things with any of your kids. My favorite thing about Athletic Speed Movement is it works with your pulling guard. We talked guards, pull all night long. It works with your tight end, your quarterback, whoever you need to get faster on the football field. Athletic Speed Movement is for them. Also remind you about Patreon, patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. It's a great place to go over if you need graphics work, if you whatever you're doing. I'm there to kind of help everyone. Lots of tiers. Find a tier that works for you, and if there's not one, shoot me an email, and we will create your very own. I'll even name it after you, Coach. I'll give it your name. Social media. I am at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter/X. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. I do have a website by the same name. I rarely go there. You can find the podcast there. And then a YouTube that's slowly gaining traction, just talking fundamentals. Joe, where can we find you, sir?
I am on Facebook, Joe Daniel Football, facebook.com/JoeDanielFootball. X is at Football Info, and then everything else is Joe Daniel Football, at Football Info on TikTok, at Football Info on Instagram, Joe at Joe Daniel Football. Email if you have questions about JDFB Premium Coaching Systems or ideas for the podcast or whatever. May not do them. We've got them planned out for a while, but it's nice to have them. And then obviously joedanielfootball.com. Check out JDFB Premium Coaching Systems over there, and the free guides.
Multiple. Podcast is at the FBCP on Twitter/X. If this is your first time listening to the Football Coaching Podcast, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you're listening live, you can jump over to any of your favorite podcatchers at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, and you can find the podcast there, and then you can subscribe. If you've been listening for a while, please leave a review, especially on Apple Podcasts. That helps us spread the word the most. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Football Coaching Podcast. And remember, coach simple, play fast, win.